Hey guys, with Super Rugby Pacific just past the halfway mark of the season, I thought what better time than now to give you guys my prediction for the Wallaby squad for 2024. Before we get into this, make sure to click that like button, guys. Would greatly appreciate that. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and definitely leave a comment below letting me know your predictions in terms of the Wallaby squad. I want to see who you think Joe Schmidt should pick, as well as just if you agree with my selection or not, let me know in the comments below. I want to see your predictions. This is what this video is about. So let me see in the comments what you guys believe, which players the Wallabies should select. But yeah, in terms of the tier list, of course, we'll be going through the different positions in terms of props, hookers, locks, loose forwards, scrum halves, fly halves, centers, and of course, wingers / fullbacks. That's the way we'll go about this. Again, I'm pretty excited to do this, guys, because the Wallabies, it's a very interesting squad to kind of go over because I think I've gone with around like over 70 players that I think are in the conversation of the Wallaby selection, as we are now in a new cycle. So it is really up for grabs for a lot of these players. So yeah, it's tough to make this decision, but again, we have to narrow it down towards 36 names. And again, you know, this squad will be going into the likes of Wales for a 2-test series, and I believe the likes of Georgia, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what they'll be able to do. But yeah, let's just straight into this. So again, in terms of my selection, in terms of the props, again, there's a load of props I can go with. You know, to name them, you know, there's James Slipper, Zane Norgard, there's Blake Schrupp, there's Matt Gibbon, there's Alex Hodgman, there's Tinian Tupo, there's Pom Fonawasi, there's Alana Toa, there's Sam Talakai, and there's Harry Johnson Holmes. So those are all the props that I've considered in this conversation. In terms of the, I guess, loosehead props, I think you have to go with James Slipper. You know, he's probably the most experienced one out of the bunch, and it just makes sense to start off with him. You know, he's had a good season so far for the Brumbies, and again, you just need someone like James Slipper in your side anyway, because he can also revert towards that tight head prop if needed. So that's just why I definitely put James Slipper in no matter what. In terms of the second one, it's tough because there's not really a lot of like loose head props. It's more tight head props that we're luckily the Wallabies are kind of blessed with. But I think in this case I would actually go with Zane Norgard. It's a tough choice because there's a lot of other props I can go in this position, because it's really between Matt Gibbon, Alex Hodgman, and Blake Schrupp here, and also Zane Norgard, who I've just selected. But I think Zane Norgard, just because for what I saw within the Wallabies in terms of that World Cup, you know, I think out of all the props there, because again, he had to play a lot of minutes with, you know, James Slipper and Blake Schrupp, I believe, getting not as many minutes. So Zane Norgard definitely had to step up there, and I think he did it right. So, and he's been a good for the Reds this season so far as well. So I'm going to back him to kind of be selected once again. And then yeah, for that last remaining loosehead prop, it's really between Matt Gibbon, Alex Hodgman, and Blake Schrupp. And I don't think, look, I would love it if Alex Hodgman gets selected, but I just don't think he'll make it. I think it's really going to be between more Matt Gibbon and Blake Schrupp. And I think between the two, Matt Gibbon's had an impressive season for the Rebels, but I mean, I just don't think in terms of a set piece, in terms of the scrums, I think Schlupp is better suited towards kind of winning scrum penalties than Matt Gibbon. So for that reason alone, I'm actually going with Blake Schlupp, even though he's just recently injured himself. I think he'll be out just for a few weeks, but he'll be available for selection. So I'm going to go with Blake Schlupp there. In terms of the other props, I mean, look, there's Tinian Tupo, Pom Fonawasi, Alana Toa, Sam Talakai, Harry Johnson Holmes. I think you got to go with Tinian Tupo. I think that's an obvious answer there. You know, again, he hasn't had as many minutes as you'd like to think under the Rebels, but still, he's a vital player towards what the Wallabies do within that kind of front row. So you've got to go with him. Again, he's a player also in the conversations, maybe going abroad. So you never know how that's going to work out in terms of the whole eligibility rules. But for now, obviously, you know, he's considered a Wallabies player. But I guess in terms of the other ones, you're probably going to go with Alana Toa. Again, a very solid player. Obviously, just came back from injury as well, following that Rugby World Cup. So he's only played a few minutes so far within Super Rugby. But again, he's just someone that you can rely on in and out. And again, similar towards James Slipper, can play both loose head and tight head. So it's one of those like where it goes in and out really for those two. And then yeah, for the final one, it's tough because it's between Pom Fonawasi, Sam Talakai, and Harry Johnson Holmes. And out of the three, I'm probably going to go with Sam Talagai just because I think he's been on form for the Rebels. Out of the two props between him and Matt Gibbon, I think he's been the better prop. So, and I've been impressed by him. So that's kind of that's the 6 props I'm selecting here for this upcoming squad for the Wallabies. In terms of the hookers, I mean, it's tough because there's Matt Fasler, there's Dave Parecki, Johnny Nuwasi, all 3 of them, of course, selected for the World Cup. But then there's also Lachlan Nolligan, Billy Pollard, Alex Maffey, Brandon Epengamosa, who's actually coming back to Australia following his stint in Montpellier. But again, he'll be available for selection because he's going to play for the Western Force starting from next season. So he's available for selection. And then there's also Tom Horton there for the Western Force. And I mean, out of this bunch, the first pick has to be Matt Fasler. He's definitely been the best hooker within Australia, without a doubt. He's been great to watch. For the Reds in particular. I mean, I think at a point he scored like a try every game for having like a run of 6 games. So yeah, he was very impressive. So you got to go with Matt Fasler for sure. In terms of the other hookers, I mean, it's tough. I mean, you would probably go Dave Parecki just to be on the safe side. But then there's also Johnny Nuwasi. I mean, he's a very in and out player because his line-out throws kind of lets him down a bit, I'd say, within Super Rugby. But he's actually a very it's a nice player to have because he gains a lot more meters, I'd say, from a hooker position than other hookers. But yeah, no, I'd still go with Dave Parecki because I just think he's more of a safer option. And again, he has a lot of experience under his belt, obviously with the Rugby World Cup, and he's signed a new contract, of course. So that just. Yeah, I think that just makes more sense. So I'll go Dave Parecki. But in terms of the third choice here, this is where it gets interesting because I think Lachlan Nolligan, of course, just injured himself, and I think he's out for the rest of the season. So it kind of limits the amount of minutes that Joe Schmidt will be able to kind of see him in action. But I think the name I'm actually going to go with here, and I think he's been very impressive even throughout the season, even though he's had gone back and forth in terms of bench and starting, is Billy Pollard. I think he's been very impressive for the Brumbies. And I think, again, he's going to have this, he's obviously stepped up now for the Brumbies in terms of a lot of these games now with Lachlan Nolligan now out for the rest of the season. So he's definitely going to have a big job in his hands. But I think he has capability to do it within the Brumby jersey in terms of that starting position, and definitely has the capability of even doing it for the Wallabies. So that's my hookers there for this Wallabies setup. So yeah, following the hookers, onto the locks. I mean, this is where it gets really tricky, guys, because there's a lot of locks in the conversation, and I'll go through them now. Like, I'll list all of them right now for you guys. There's Will Skelton, there's Nick Frost, there's Richie Arnold, Tom Hooper, and Rob Latea, who were the 5 who were selected for the Wallabies. Then you have the likes of Ryan Smith in the conversation, Josh Cannon there for the Rebels, up-and-coming lock. There's Lachlan Sakai-Loto, who's now obviously returned back to Super B for the Rebels, but been pretty impressive. There's Darcy Swain for the Brumbies, Ned Hannigan for the Waratahs, Tuolima for the Rebels. Again, he's kind of switched between lock and number 8, but still a very versatile player, and even 6 as well. So he's been really kind of all over the place. But then there's also Isaac Rada. Again, hasn't had a lot of minutes, not a lot of minutes under his belt, but has always been very reliable in the past. There's also Katie Neville, who's done pretty well for the Brumbies this season. And then to finish it off, there's Jeremy Williams for the Western Force. And again, there's Sura Uru, but I'm not kind of considering him. He is in the lock conversation, but he's in the 6 conversation. So I'm not sure where to put him yet, but he's in the conversation, at least for both positions. But in terms of locks, you're definitely know Will Skelton without a doubt. And again, that'll be one of the, I guess, Mac Gutu kind of players that you'll put into this squad. Again, he was the captain for Australia. I don't think he'll be captain this time going forward, but I still will go Will Skelton because he's on his day. He's still one of the best locks in the world. You're probably going to go. See, this is the tricky bit. Do you still go with Nick Frost? I mean, it's tough. There's a lot of locks here, guys, in the conversation, so this is why it's tough to do this selection here. But I think you probably would go with Nick Frost because he's a very consistent player. Again, he hasn't been as amazing as he was last year for the Brumbies, but still a very consistent performer. So I'll probably go Nick Frost still. I would probably then go with Ryan Smith. I've been very impressed by him in the red setup. He's been arguably the best lock, you could say, from the Australian sides within this comp so far. I mean, he's really done well for the Reds. I think he's won the most lineouts, if I'm not mistaken, as well. So yeah, he's definitely up there in the conversation. So I'd definitely go with him. And then You know what? This may be a bold pick, but I'm definitely going to go with Lachlan Sai-Carloto. I think he deserves a return towards the Wallabies setup. I think he's been really impressive under of the Rebels this year. I mean, he's played obviously more at lock this year, but he has he's shown in the past that he can play at 6, so it's good to have someone kind of versatile in your setup like him. And then with the final position, this is where it gets interesting because I've kind of narrowed this down towards at least like 3 players, guys. It's really between Tom Hooper, Josh Cannon, and I'd probably say Darcy Swain. Those are the 3 I'm kind of looking at in this position because I think all 3 of them definitely have the capability to play for the Wallabies. But in terms of form, I don't think Tom Hooper has been as good this season. It's tough to say that. Even Darcy Swain has been on and off. Really, Tom Hooper and Darcy Swain have been a bit inconsistent. That's the best way I can say this. But in terms of player I've been really impressed by, actually, is Josh Cannon. And I think he really does. I mean, this is a bolter, guys. So you can obviously question me if you guys don't believe I'm right in this. But I think he's been really impressive for the Rebels, guys. I mean, if you look at his minutes, he's had a lot of minutes under his belt. I think he's up there with most lineups won as well. If you look at the stats, so he's had a really impressive season for the Rebels, and I think he's definitely in the conversation because he's a young lock as well. I think he's like 22, 23. So you want to kind of develop locks for the future as well. There's not a lot of them because it's only really him and you could say Nick Frost, who are more on the young side of things. So you want to kind of develop that as well. And I think Joe Schmidt will have that in mind. So that's the reason why I've gone with him as my 5th and final lock there. So it's a tough choice, but that is the locks I've selected. But in terms of loose forwards, this is where it gets tricky as well because, there's Uru, who I've already discussed. There's Rob Valentini. There's Fraser McWright, Langley Gleeson. Of course, those 3 were obviously made the Wallaby squad. Then you have the likes of Dezano there for the Western Force, Charlie Gamble for the Waratahs, Harry Wilson for the Reds, Charlie Cale for the Brumbies, and then you also have the likes of Ikawasi there that finish it up. So it is a big selection there in terms of loose forwards. Again, you're going to definitely go with Roll Valentini and Fraser McWright. I mean, those are the 2 guarantees, in my opinion. I mean, without a doubt. I mean, these 2 have had great seasons for both their respective clubs. Again, for the meantime, yes, Fraser McWright is kind of suspended. He's served his last, I think. He has 1 more game. He's going to serve it as a suspension, if I'm not mistaken. But still has been very impressive throughout the season. I mean, up there with the best loose forwards, I say, from an Australian standpoint. So he definitely makes it in. And again, he is really I think, the prime candidate to kind of hold that 7 jersey for the Wallabies. And then, in terms of Roll Valentini, he's been just awesome as normal. He's been very consistent. I'd say very consistent for the Brumbies, and has really just kind of proved to everyone that he still has the capability of playing 6 as well. Because again, there's been another player who's been playing a lot more in 8 this season, and I know I shouldn't jump to him straight away, but I'm just adding him because he has been awesome, and it's Charlie Cale. I think he's another player who I believe is a bolter who should get selected for the Wallabies. I think he's been so impressive for the Brumbies this year, like really impressive, and he's got a lot of tries under his belt as well. So it just kind of backs that he has the capability of scoring tries from an 8 position, which is important. So that's the reason why I've gone with Charlie Cale there. In terms of the other players, I mean, look, this is tough because I think I actually would go with Uru here, guys, because again, he can play as a lock and you have cover there, or he can play as a 6 where he has been playing for a bit as well. So I would go Uru. He's been outstanding, guys, like outstanding for the Reds. Again, he's been recently injured, but besides that, he's been outstanding. So I definitely would select him, and it would be the first time he becomes a Wallaby. So I don't like to see it happen. But in terms of the other selections, because again, Valentini can cover 6, the same with Uru. Fraser McWright with the 7, Charlie Cale with the 8. This is where it gets tough because I think I'll probably go with Harry Wilson here because I think he's always been a player that's always been left out as a lot of the Wallabies sides, and he hasn't made the Wallabies in a very long time. I think the last time he got selected for the Wallabies was back when Dave Rennie was in charge at the very start of his kind of coaching. So I think he definitely deserves to get a call up. I think Harry Wilson, he's just always there in the conversation, and he always kind of tops the stats in terms of meters gained, really. So not in terms of meters, sorry, in terms of carries. So I just think he's one player you have to go with, and he's been excellent for the Reds as well. And then yeah, in terms of that final position, I think I really need a 7 here. So this is where it gets tough because it's really between 2 sevens here, because it's between Dezzano there and Charlie Gamble. And I think both players have had very similar seasons for both their respective clubs. I mean, Dezzano has been very good for the Western Force. Again, I know obviously they're sitting at the bottom of the table in terms of the standings, but from an individual standpoint, he's been excellent. I mean, I think he's had the second most amount of tackles in the competition so far. So that just shows you from a defensive standpoint, he's a player that you can rely on from that position. But Charlie Gamble has been very impressive within the breakdown this year. Very impressive. And he's won the ball in key moments for the Warthogs, and that's kind of allowed them to kind of progress up the field and obviously get the points they have. So it's a tough one. I think both players are excellent because, I mean, Charlie Gamble's 27, Tizzano's younger. I think he's like 24 years old, if not mistaken. So age is definitely on Tizzano's side here. It's tough. It's tough. I think I'm gonna go with Tizzano here. This may be This is another bolter, but I'm gonna go with Tizzano. I think he's been really good for the Western Force, and not a lot of people have given him recognition, I think. So I'm gonna go with Tizzano. And then moving on then towards the scrum halves. Then this is where it gets kind of easy, I'd say. This is like the one position I think is pretty easy. You're gonna definitely go with Tim McDermott without a doubt. Similar towards Fraser McWright. I know he's suspended, but he'll be available. So Tim McDermott 100% gets in the starting scrum half. Guaranteed. Following him, I'd probably still go with Nick White. Again, you still want a bit of experience, and I just think he adds that. Again, he could be. You could even consider him as a third choice one if you wanted to. But again, he still has the ability to play even as a starting scrum half or second. So he's very versatile. Kind of, I guess, his minutes. So that's a kind of a good thing to see. What you want from the player as well. But then, within the other ones, though, there's there's Fines, Eliza, there's Jake Gordon, there's Ryan Lonigan, and then there's actually Thomas as well I've included from the Reds. But again, I've only included him because he's more on the younger side compared to all these other scrum halves, and you kind of need to kind of develop a youth, I think. But maybe it's too soon to kind of add him in. I don't know. I think for this one, I'm between Jake Gordon and Ryan Lonigan for this, guys. I think Fines won't get in the Wallabies again. Jake Gordon or Ryan Lonigan. Gosh, this is a tough pick. To be fair, I could actually go with both of them instead of Nick White, switch things up a bit. But then I just think Nick White's going to get in because he's just an experienced player. It's tough. Jake Gordon's had a good season. He's had a good season for the... Let me quickly look at the stats right here because he's had a very good season for the Warthogs when I look at the stats. Yeah, I think Jake Gordon deserves it. I'm going to go with Jake Gordon. That may be a bold call there, guys, but that's the 3 I've gone with. I'm leaving Ryan Lonigan out. Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going those 3 there. In terms of the fly-offs, I think, honestly, this is the easiest position. I'm going to go easiest pick because you're going to go with Carter Gordon. He's been outstanding this year for the Rebels. Really has carried them on their back for a lot of the games in terms of getting a lot of points on the board. And has been, I think he has the second most amount of points. Well, actually, now it's third, I believe, because Noah Sale's taken over. Or it's either him or Noah Sale, I don't know. But he's still in the top 3 for most points in the comps, so you got to go with him. In terms of the second, you're going to definitely go with Noah Sale. He's been excellent for the Brumbies, and he proved that once again against the Hurricanes in that win. So you're going to definitely go with him. He's just a playmaker, but also he's very accurate with his kicking, and he's just a solid player to have. And he's always been very good with the Wallabies, actually. So I really kind of want him back in the setup. And then, in terms of the third one, you're going to definitely go with Ben Donaldson. I think it's very easy. Again, I know there's obviously other fly-offs I haven't mentioned here. There's Tom Lana, there's Ted Edmond, there's Will Harrison and even James O'Connor if you want to mention him. But I think these 3 are just set in stone as the free fly-off options. And again, Ben Donaldson can also play at 15 if needed. So kind of gives you a bit of versatility in that way. But in terms of the centers, oh gosh, there's Karevi, Laikai Foketti, there's Hunter Pasami, there's Leonard Katau, there's Josh Fluke, Filippo Dangaru, there's Hamish Stewart, there's even Joey Walton. So there's a lot of players up for selection, I think, from the center standpoint. In terms of Super Pre players, you're definitely with Hunter Pasami. I think he's been excellent for the Reds this year. And I think also Josh Fluke, his partner in crime, both of them have been you could make a case saying this has been the best combination, or at least up there in the top two at least, because there is Jordy Barrett and Billy Proctor. You probably say is been the best center combination this season, but I'd say Hunter Basami and Josh Fluke are probably the second best combination this year. I think that's not a bold thing to say, because I think both of them have been excellent so far. So I think those two get in. And then, in terms of the other two or three, I mean, you're going to go with Karevi probably because he's just an excellent player to have. And again, he is still world class on his day, so you're going to definitely consider, you're still going to go with him, someone like him. Again, you're going to go with someone like Len Ikatal. I think he's obviously coming back now from injury, but and has played a few games now. I think he played in that game against the Hurricanes, actually, but he kind of went off the field, if I'm not mistaken, for a bit. So a bit iffy on if that's a injury or not. We'll have to wait and see. But I think for the meantime, you're still going to go with Len Ikatal. And then, for the final one, do I go with another center here? I mean, I'm kind of looking between Hamish Stewart, Folchetti, and Philippe Dongadu. But I think, honestly, between the three, Dongadu has been so impressive for the Rebels. I mean, he's been outstanding. I know I keep saying outstanding, but a lot of these players have been this season. He's just been excellent to watch. And I think he, again, is another versatile player where he can play 14 if needed. We actually saw that in that game against the Crusaders, where Matty Proctor filled in that 13 spot and he moved out to 14. So I think Dongadu is just a great player to have. He finds that he's a playmaker as well, but also finds that try. So, I think he deserves to get him to this Wallabies side. So I'm going with him. And then, and again, the wingers and fullbacks. Gosh, this is tough. Well, you have Corbetti. I mean, Corbetti, you're going to definitely go with. There's Mark Narquatawasi, but I'm not going to go with him, guys. I don't think he deserves to get into the Wallabies because, again, he's already kind of signed up for NRL next season, and I don't think he's had a really impressive year for the Waratahs, so I'm not even going to consider him. Vunivalu is a tough one. Gosh, he's an excellent player. There's also Mac Jorgensen, of course. There's Andrew Kellaway. I think Andrew Kellaway is the other one. It's a guarantee because he covers that fullback position, so he's guaranteed to kind of get into this side. Gosh, who else? I mean, there's Corey Toole, there's Darby Lancaster, there's Tom Wright. There's even Tim Ryan, who I actually included here, who just scored a hat-trick against the Blues. Again, I don't think he'll get into the Wallabies setup, but he's definitely going to be in the conversation now just because of what he did in that game with Joe Schmidt watching. There's even Kurtley Bill I've actually included in this because, again, you never know. Kurtley Bill, again, he has a ton of experience under his belt, and he's someone that you can rely on at the big stage. So it's one of those where it's never bad going with someone experienced because, again, it's actually turned out pretty good for the Wallabies in the past with the likes of Quade Cooper and Foley. So it's not a bad thing to turn to one of your experienced guys, but do I think he'll get in? I'm not sure. We'll wait and see. Maybe there's a few more games, and maybe in my updated prediction, he may get slot in. But for the meantime, this is an early prediction, just to keep you guys, just to remind you guys. So I think for the meantime, you got to go with Corey Toole. He's been sensational for the Brumbies this year. I mean, he's just carved apart teams apart after part. So you're definitely going to go with him. I think you're probably also going to go with Tom Wright because I think he's just been very consistent for the Brumbies and can act as a cover for Andrew Kellaway in terms of that 15 spot and can also play 14 if needed. Same with Kellaway, can play 14. And then, I mean, I think I'm in the final. I think I can only select one more player now. And this is the tough spot here, guys, because I think I have one more player I can select here. And I'm honestly flicking between Vunivalu and Darby Lancaster here. And this is where it gets tough because I want to be fair in how I say this, guys. I think Vunivalu has had a very underrated season for the Reds. A very underrated season for the Reds. And I think more people will probably want Darby Lancaster to get into the Wallaby squad. But I honestly I need to just tell you guys that Vunivalu deserves to get in. So I'm not going to be mad if he gets into this Wallaby squad for the upcoming one. But in terms of the players I've selected, however, I've already selected 3 players who can play 14. I've gone with Filipe Dongadu, obviously playing at the number 13 spot, but can shift towards that 14. You have Andrew Kellaway, who can play at that 14 as well, and you have Tom Wright. So, and I've only selected 2 players who can play 11. So, in this scenario, I'm going to go with Darby Lancaster. And I think he's been excellent this year as well for the Rebels. Again, he just scored a hat-trick in one game as well. I think against the Highlanders, if I'm not mistaken. And again, he can play 14 as well. So he can play both sides, which is good. So, I think that's it, guys. I think that is my squad for the Wallabies. Let me know if you guys like my selection, agree with it. Also, let me know what you think the Wallabies squad could be in terms of the players that I've mentioned. Again, this is obviously just my opinion, so it's just one of those where I've tried to base this a bit off of what Joe Schmidt will kind of select as well. But generally, this is just my opinion of what I believe the players who stood up this season so far. There's some hard omissions, I believe. The two key ones probably being Vinivalu, I'd probably say Charlie Gamble, another one, and probably Matt Gibbon. I mean, yeah, Matt Gibbon's been good. Who else? I mean, Tom Hooper and Darcy Swain have been good as well. Gosh, yeah, there's some tough. Yeah, I feel bad. Gosh, it's tough. It's tough. It's hard doing this, but that is my Wallaby squad for 2024 in terms of those two Wales tests as well as the Georgia tests. So yeah, let me know your thoughts, obviously, in the comments below. Like I said, like the video, guys. We greatly appreciate that. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. And yeah, see you guys next time.